My question for men in the house: if I had the keys to a free BMW, how many of you want that? A lot of you would. Well, instead of having a BMW, my daddy tells me we need to be a BMW. To be a BMW, you need to be a black man working. And I ask you, what are you doing? Finding greatness through service, or just waiting to be served? Repeat after me. I want to find greatness through service, and not just wait to be served. I'm going to use an alliteration of W's. What, who, and why. What do you stand for? Who do you represent? And why should anybody take you seriously? Ask yourself, what would the world be like if Dr. King didn't make his steps of service? Think about it. He could have been many things. Dr. King could have been a successful businessman who could have stayed in the comfort of his own home, not bothering anybody. He could have even been a famous TV preacher today and still be living. His service caused him to become the pastor of the Dexter Street Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama, when Rosa Parks took her steps of service. They both exhibited greatness through service. His service resulted in his house being bombed, with his wife and small children still inside. His service caused him to be stabbed in the chest by a black woman in 1958 in New York City. His service caused him to be arrested over and over again in 1960, 61, 62, and 63, and so on. And again, I want to ask you, what are you doing? Finding greatness through service, or are you just waiting to be served? Repeat after me. I want to find greatness through service, and not just wait to be served. Dr. King found greatness through service, which ultimately cost him his life at the age of 39. I want to ask you, what do you stand for? Do you stand for anything? There's an old saying that goes, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. What is your anchor in life? What is the most important thing to you? Is it what your friends say about you? Is it what the people at your job think about you? Is it what your friends say you should act and dress like? And while I'm on that point, I've noticed that a lot of young people wear their pants and showing their underwear when they're walking around. Guess what my daddy told me? If he saw any one of my friends walk in the house showing his underwear, that's basically like telling his wife, my mama, to kiss his rear end. How would you like it if I walked in your house and showed your mama my underwear and said, kiss my rear end? My job today is to give you some medicine. It may not taste good, but it's good for you. What do people see you as? Do people see you as the type of person who will fall for anything? Are you willing to straighten your backs and stand for something? Dr. King said to the sanitation workers in Memphis to straighten your backs. A man can't ride your back unless it is bent. Is your back straight? Are you willing to stand for something? Are you willing to stand for something? Or do people put a saddle on your back and ride you like a rented mule? When Dr. King was asked why was he willing to go help the sanitation workers out, his response was simple. The answer isn't what will happen to me if I go to help them out. The question should be, what will happen to them if I don't go and help them out? He already had too much on his plate, but that is what service is all about. What do you stand for? What are you doing? Finding greatness through service, or are you just waiting to be served? Repeat after me. I want to find greatness through service, and not just wait to be served. The second question I want to ask you, who do you represent? When you step outside those doors and get into the real world, you guys don't represent Shaniqua or Dante or even Joshua. You know who you represent? You represent the Claytons, the Johnsons, the Jones, and the Williamsons. Old school way of putting it is, the only thing you have is your good name and your reputation. If for some reason, heaven forbid, that something were to happen to you today, that you weren't going to make it tomorrow, what would your legacy be? And what would people say about you? My daddy gave me a name, and he told me to keep it clean, because if not, he was going to take his name back. Martin Luther King III, Dr. King's son, is still living out that legacy by challenging other people to get involved, just as his father did. My family and I lived in Atlanta, Georgia, and we attended the old Ebenezer Baptist Church where Dr. King, Daddy King made, where Dr. King preached at. I was the youngest member at that time, and when we were moving into the new church, they gave me a pair of golden scissors, and they wanted me to cut the ribbon to open the new church. A lot of the King family members were there, but last year, I met Martin Luther King III. I sang and played piano for him, and when I met him, he was such an encouraging man. When I talked to him, he inspired me, just as his father inspired him. I want to ask you, what are you doing? Finding greatness through service, or just waiting to be served? Lastly, I want to ask you a final question. Why should anybody take you seriously? You can't just walk in the door and demand to become a leader. My dad says in order for you to lead, you first must follow. Dr. King was a leader, and he still exhibited greatness through service. Is there something in your life that people see God in you every day? You can't well, let me give you an example. I don't know if this happens in Michigan, but down home in Texas, this involves Latino folks, Asian folks, white folks, and black folks. You see their pants hanging down to their butts, with a do-rag on their head, with a baseball cap turned backwards, and this gold teeth all in their mouth with the chains hanging down. Well, if you go into a job interview looking like that, asking, where am I supposed to get my job application? You really think you're going to get a job there? How are you going to expect to be treated like a king when you dress like a clown? Woo! And another thing, why do all of us young people want to be like these gangster rappers on TV? I mean, kids used to dream about becoming doctors and lawyers and teachers and preachers. That was Dr. King's dream for the young people. Now all we want to become is Mr. Big Baller and Shot Caller. Well, you know what? For some, Dr. King's dream became a nightmare for some. Shattered dreams, people. Shattered dreams. And something that just really eats me up, why do some of these gangster rappers describe our black queens as the B word? Women, I know you should be treated better than that. If you have a knucklehead who's calling you any other name besides your God-given name, just turn around and walk away. Eventually, he'll get the message when he realizes he's talking to the back of your head. And another thing, some of these gangster rappers can't say 10 words without saying the N-word twice.